that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Finnell. I'm George Harvey. This is Tom Finnell.
I'm Tom Finnell.
Yeah. And what this is based on is every day I get up early and look at the news, and I run a blog that has links to the various news items I find, which of late there have been anywhere from 10 to 16 a day. It takes me about 2.5 to 3 hours to find them. And I keep that blog for anybody who wants to go to it. It's called geoharvey.wordpress.com. I also write for Green Energy Times. Green Energy Times, there it is.
Hey.
Don't say I didn't warn you. So we've got a lot of information, and I figured I would share it with people on television. This is one of these beautiful things about television, you know, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it.
And everything here came either directly or indirectly from something you had picked
Yeah.
up. And I know that one of them very early on, I guess it was last Thursday, I think it was talking about these gas engines for generating electricity. So I got a picture of the GE Jenbacher engines.
Jenbacher, that J is like a Y. Yeah, Jenbacher.
I'm one of them Yanks. I pronounce my
Well, I try I try to pronounce things the way that people pronounce them. You know, it's like when I was a little kid, we had an au pair who was German, and she said, "Why do you say Martin Luther? His name is Luther."
Interesting.
Yeah, and my parents both laughed.
I'm trying to think about this. Every time I learn to say such and so, you say it's such as. I can't remember the joke. It had to do with the J sound.
Oh, well.
Let's take a look at these engines here, though.
Now, are these all Jenbacher engines?
They're all Jenbacher. This just came right out of the Jenbacher catalog.
Oh, okay. I want one of those. Can I get them to send it to me? Can I get them to send me a catalog? Never mind. I know it is. It's online. Yeah.
The one on the right looks like a locomotive from here.
Well, these...
It's a V24 cylinder engine.
Yeah. These engines were based on engines that were originally intended to be put into locomotives.
Locomotives and ships.
And ships. Yeah. I didn't know the ships, but yeah, they were locomotive engines.
The biggest one here, I think, is 4 megawatts. I think it is.
The biggest one there is a 4 megawatt engine. They make...
This one, 5 megawatt plant will use 3 fuel flex Jenbacher engines.
Okay.
So they're doing it differently. It's not one engine, it's 3, so that they can ramp them up and down as they need it.
Well, you know, these things come on really, really fast.
Well, like you start a car.
It's like starting a car. Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. I looked at one of these up close, and they're diesel engines.
But they have spark plugs. Yeah.
And the reason for that is to start the gas. It doesn't have a high enough cetane rating, they call it.
Is that instead of a glow plug? I know a lot of diesel engines have glow plugs.
The glow plug is just to warm the cylinder for the first start of the engine. And these things operate continually just to ignite the gas.
I've got you. Okay.
The methane gas doesn't want to ignite just on compression.
Okay.
So they have a little bit of an assist there.
Okay.
But
so,
you know probably more about these things than I do, but they're impressive because if you clean the gas, if you scrub the gas before you put them in that engine,
right,
which you have to.
If you're starting with biogas, these things will run on natural gas, and I imagine you could probably adjust them to run on propane if you had a big supply of it.
Yeah, they probably would run on hydrogen if you.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah.
But what comes out is very pure.
Very pure. Yeah, and what what Tom has been talking about here is the gas coming from a biodigester will provide gas, and that may have to be scrubbed because it might have silicates in it. But the gas from a wood gasification system, you have to get the particulates out, and you have to get tars out, and you have to do that before you put particulates and tars into a diesel engine. You want to you got to clean it.
Absolutely.
So what goes in there is basically just methane. It might have carbon monoxide, which will burn as a fuel. And it goes in and it burns just like a regular fuel, except that it's going to burn like natural gas because it's more similar to natural gas than anything else. So it doesn't have the typical diesel kind of smell and the exhaust particulates and so forth. But in addition to that, it is, unlike natural gas, it doesn't have the things that natural gas has got, which are not taken out completely. And those include gaseous mercury and sulfur compounds and things of that nature. Radon is present in natural gas. And so this is arguably cleaner.
Purer to go in.
That's right.
It's purer to come out.
It's arguably cleaner than burning natural gas. So here we've got a biomass system which is very, very, very clean compared to anything else that could be burned in an internal combustion machine except for hydrogen. There you go.
We're moving in the right direction.
We're moving in the right direction. The largest of these things, by the way, in Europe is that I've read about is 9.5 megawatts. The largest engine. They have big engines in Europe. They don't.
Big one.
Yeah, they don't move them to the United States, and I think it might be just a matter of shipping.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, they're big.
They're big. That's right.
They're probably too big for a shipping container.
They might be.
They have to go
You
through
know.
cargo or something.
Yeah, they might be. It would be like moving a diesel locomotive.
Yeah.
And that, as I said, you know, Jenbacher was originally, Jenbacher is a company that has a history that goes back, I think, a long ways. It might be back to the Middle Ages, I don't know. But they were recently, a few years ago, purchased by GE. They're an Austrian company, and in Austria, they had been making, they've made all kinds of things, including flatware for eating, but, you know, it's during their recent history, post-World War II history, they've been specializing on diesel engines for locomotives.
They're one of these old lines.
Yeah, I think they might have started as they might have started as a mining company or a, you know, I don't know. But it was a long time ago. It was hundreds of years ago at the least. And
Another picture I want to bring up. This is real quick. I read about this one because they're building a huge 94 megawatt wind power plant in Wyoming County, New York. And
right.
I know where Wyoming County was.
Yeah,
so that's where it is.
Yeah.
It's out near Buffalo.
Yeah.
Look at the size of that nutshell.
Yeah.
Just look at the size.
It's how do you judge the size of a nacelle? I think there's something on the top of that. Is that
I don't think that's people. I think it's an antenna of some sort.
Yeah.
You can't from this picture.
Right.
You can from some other picture.
Okay. Now that thing that's on top of the nacelle, I think, might be a weather station.
Yeah, something like that.
That would tell the thing,
wind is, when the wind's
because
coming.
they don't trail those blades; they have them face into the wind,
Yeah.
in order to take advantage of the better airflow that they have before the turbulence.
From what we saw last week, that nacelle's about the size of a large trailer truck box.
Okay.
Maybe even a little bit bigger.
Now how big is that? Do you know what each turbine is producing?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I didn't know.
All right.
As we know, the biggest one that's available now is 8 megawatts. And they're probably pushing 10. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Look at
Who knows what they're doing? You know.
The next shot here is, we're talking about energy storage, okay? And this is a biggie. Because if we can generate this electricity at only certain times of the day, what can we do to store it so we can use it all the time? And they're working on more and more kinds. And on the left, we got a list of different kinds of energy storage that we're using now. There's chemical, which is batteries and fuel cells.
Right.
There's thermal,
Yes.
making ice, or they're storing it as water, or they're storing it as molten salt.
Right. Water storage is being attempted for storage for houses, where that you have solar panels that heat water,
Heat the water.
and then the water's down
water
in the basement, and it's a huge thermal mass to keep the
Some of
house
it is
heated.
interesting. They're calling it potential energy. So we got hydro.
Right.
This is pump storage.
Yes,
I love pump storage.
I do too. Yeah.
Well, we've talked about having probably just a whole show on
yeah.
the Northfield Pump Storage Station.
Yeah.
It's a park. We go down there with the camera, take some pictures.
Yeah, we should do that.
The other one we talked about last week was rail car.
Yes.
They run a rail car up a mountain. And drop
Don't you love it? Yeah.
And another kind of potential energy is compressing air.
You suppose we could talk the people in that cog railroad on Mount Washington to putting a generator so that they could have regenerative braking on the way
They're
down?
probably ahead of us. They're probably thinking about that.
I don't know, those engines that they've used are really old.
And here's another one, kinetic energy.
Kinetic energy,
There
yes.
is I think it's Milltown, New York. It's over near North Adams.
Right.
There is actually a
Flywheel. Yeah.
generating station or
Yeah.
storage station
Yep.
over there. And regenerative braking you already mentioned that
Yeah.
as part of the rail car.
When I had a car, my Prius had regenerative braking.
Now, here's another one that's real interesting. That thing that the guy is holding between his fingers is a pellet made
Right.
of coffee.
Yes.
A London-based firm is using coffee waste from cappuccinos and lattes to generate clean energy.
Yeah.
Now, this is what they said. I find it hard to believe. The company's called Beat Energy,
Yeah.
and it collects waste from the coffee shops in the capital, meaning London, and processes it in its facility, which has a production capacity of 50,000 tons a year. That's a lot of coffee. I find that hard to believe.
I find it fairly easy to believe that you could get 50,000 tons a year out of a city the size of
It
London.
produces around 260 gigawatt hours of renewable energy, which can power as many as 1,750 coffee shops.
Yeah, and
Once the
coffee
waste is
shops.
collected, it is put through a machine and then dried, following which it is converted into energy pellets. And there's your pellet.
Now, one objection that I have to this is that coffee beans are very useful for growing food. They can be used, you can compost them and use them in your garden, but you can also use them to grow mushrooms.
Yeah, you can.
And I wonder whether in their calculations they figured out whether their system of just burning them, because there's a lot of oil in those beans.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether that's actually the best use of those beans when you compare it with using them to grow food.
I remember when I was a kid, my next door neighbor had a flower garden. It
Yeah.
was a lovely, lovely flower garden.
Yeah.
And
All-
coffee greens and eggshells.
Okay.
Now, that was what you could see, but,
Yeah.
that was what you used for a fertilizer. And
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got Bill McKibben up there. We've talked about him.
Yes, we have.
Next one I'll bring up, this is interesting. This is a solar plant in Israel.
Yeah, that was in the news, wasn't it? And they're putting these things out in the desert. And I wonder about that because the desert reduces efficiency. Solar.
If you can see what's going on there, the dark blue is a solar plant.
Yep.
The other plants, other pictures there, those other rectangles are some sort of farming.
Right.
So it's all irrigated.
Yeah.
I suspect the little dots in the foreground are fruit trees or something like that.
Yeah, some sort of plants.
So this is, like a kibbutz or something like that, where
Yeah.
they're growing there, and they're putting in this solar power plant, 36 megawatts. That's a big plant.
It's a big plant. There's no
36
question
megawatts.
about that. As PV plants go, that's huge.
Let's see what's up there next. Well, we talked about the wind quotes. We had the factory top.
Oh,
Here's
look at
a
this.
lovely picture.
A lovely picture. Let's look at that picture. There, folks, that's the future of humanity,
That's a thermal power station in Sofia, Bulgaria.
unless we do something about it.
Wow. I'm sure Not looking forward to something like that.
No.
Yeah, this one's interesting. This will give you another picture of the size of the wind turbine.
Yes.
This one's in Germany. You can see there's two guys in that picture, so you can see how big that. Well, it's the hub and the blades for a turbine.
Put your cursor where the guys are, so kind of outline them, because you got the wrong cursor.
Now,
They are.
This is also interesting because if you see that picture, everything's leaning inwards, including the guys.
Yes.
Guys, people can't stand that way, so they had to use some kind of special lens.
Well, actually, no. They could have tipped the camera, because that's.
Well, the other side is leaning too.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's still, it shows you how big that thing is.
Yes, it does.
And the only reason I took the picture on the right, it's a picture taken from a landfill gas utilization plant in Ireland.
Yes.
And the guy on the left, his name is Rabbit, or maybe Rabit.
Yes.
And the guy on the right is holding a hawk.
Yes.
That's why I took the picture.
That's a very good point. I saw that picture and I thought, that's a great picture with that hawk. I wonder if the folks can see the hawk on the television.
I can't easily make it bigger. I could, but I might
You
not
can
be
see
able
the
to
hawk's
backward.
bill right about where the guy on the right. You can see the hawk's bill just to the right of his
Yes.
ear, and the hawk is resting on his arm.
And it says that the hawk is utilized to maintain the landfill.
Yes.
I guess they give him a shovel.
Well, I hope they pay him.
An interesting thing too. This is also interesting. This is Ireland now,
Yes.
Southern Ireland.
Okay.
Guys are wearing orange jackets.
Well, I mean.
20 years ago, they'd have been shot for doing that.
Well, I know that, but you'll notice that the jackets are not all orange. And if you really want me to, I'll send them a pair of suspenders.
Yeah, we talked about this one. What makes Vermont's net metering expansion so unique? So we need to cover that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Bring up the picture.
Yeah. That is, here you've got a leaning barn, probably also because of the way it was photographed.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, though. It's a farm. As you drive around Vermont, I notice an awful lot of farms have solar built on it.
Yep, they do.
And there's a solar there in the background. There.
We've had a bunch of articles in Green Energy Times about farms that are powered by solar. Some of the maple sugar producers have got their operations powered by solar.
That's an interesting thing. Solar-powered maple syrup.
That's right.
So they're using reverse osmosis and...
Almost all of them are using a reverse osmosis because it just reduces the energy load required enormously. But they have solar-powered. Some of them it's wood-powered for burning, but the solar is used for lighting and so forth. But there are some that are going to solar for their heating their syrup, and then we see it also
bringing it up to temperature and final boiling.
Right.
It'll be done with wood.
Right. James Perkins, who is coming next week, had that thing about a dairy farm where all the lighting in the dairy barn was being provided by hydro.
Very small hydro.
Small enough that you could just about hold it in your lap. This thing was. It would fit on this desk with lots of room to spare, and if people are starting to do this. What else do you have?
Here's another quote. This is the head of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. You talked about that.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't think we need to go to 100% renewables, although I think we can, he says.
Yep.
And I don't know why you would want to pay to be autonomous off the grid. The extra cost that it entails to be isolated as an act of bravado is absurd. It is an interconnected world.
Yeah, that's
This is
true.
what we were saying about a network of grids that can stand alone.
If they have to.
They're all interconnected.
That's
if they
right.
want to be.
The cost of standing alone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week
Isn't worth it.
is high compared to the cost of saying, oh, this thing needs repair. Let's close it down this afternoon and get our extra.
Exactly.
And you know, we've talked about the Brattleboro retreat and the fact that they've got 3 quarter-megawatt diesel gensets there. And the reason why they would buy power from CVPS at the time, and now it's Green Mountain Power, at a price that's higher than it costs them to generate power, is because the cost to generate power assumes that a generator is working at full load, and they don't have any generators.
Got a guy they're paying there to run.
Yeah, but if their load is 300 kilowatts, and they've got one 250 kilowatt engine running, then they would have to fire up another engine to cover their load.
Just to cover the load.
And at that point, it becomes more expensive. So it's cheaper for them to buy the difference from the grid.
And they're getting a special rate too.
And they're getting a special rate. But the point is, they can, you know, when we've got distributed power, we can take advantage of special rates, but we can also keep the rates down for everybody. So.
No, it's coming. It's going to come just because it's a good idea.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna
agree.
be
I absolutely
economically
agree.
sound.
Absolutely. What else you got?
Let's take a quick look at this other one here. It's about methane escaping.
Oh,
So
brother.
the picture on the left is an actual methane escaping from a natural gas production site.
Now, I saw a picture of one of these things a couple of weeks ago that was with an article. This is flaring.
It's flaring, yeah. Somebody lit it, so it's not quite as bad as pure methane.
Right. Well, it's nowhere near as bad because that methane that's burning, if it went into the atmosphere, it would be somewhere between 20 and 40 times as bad as the carbon dioxide it's being burned into. But in one of the big fracking fields, 37% of the methane that they got was flared.
Escaping.
It was flared.
Wow, 37.
Was flared, and that doesn't count what might be escaping that isn't flared.
Yeah.
And we just don't know what that is, and they won't tell us if they do know because they don't want us to know.
Well, this image here talks about the places where it can escape. But
Lots
the
of
numbers
places.
that they're talking about are much, much lower than that.
Yeah.
It can escape from where they're drilling and fracking.
Yep.
That's before they're pumping it.
Yep.
Okay, it can escape from production, this is where they're pumping it.
Right.
It can escape from processing. I don't know what they have to do to process it, I guess.
They have to get everything out that isn't methane.
Clean it up.
They have to
Okay.
clean it up.
From transportation and distribution, that's the pipelines.
Yep.
And finally, from end use, it's leaking from people's homes.
Yep.
So as the diagram shows, leaks of potent greenhouse gas methane occurs at all stages of production, processing, transportation. A problem that has become far worse as the hydrofracking boom has vastly expanded natural gas drilling in the U.S. So it's a problem, and they're really not doing a heck of a lot to address it. They're just letting it happen.
Well, the understanding that I have is that some of them are not doing anything really to address it unless they think they have to, but that others are being more careful. And I don't know who is who on that particular front, but what do you have there?
Well, the next one is a ski slope.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, there's a story here, and it talks about the balsams.
Yes.
Balsams up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And they want, well, right now they got a buffer zone between the windmills up on the top of the mountain and the actual start of the ski slope.
Right.
And I asked somebody that I know about Snow, how come they don't have any windmills up there? You know, it seemed to me to be a natural. You can't talk about preserving the ridge line because they've got structures all over the ridge line. And the answer was, well, in the wintertime these things shed ice. So we can't build them too close to skiers.
Right.
Which is why there's a buffer zone here.
Right.
The company, and I'll read a little bit about it because it ties in with even with Mount Snow. The company that owns the wind farm near the balsams to open is open to reducing the buffer zone between its wind turbines and the slopes. A key to a developer's plan to greatly expand the size of the ski resort. Okay, he wants to reduce that buffer zone. Maine entrepreneur Les Otten, you remember that name?
No.
He used to own Mount Snow.
Oh, okay.
And he didn't do a good job of it. He would like to quadruple the size of the Balsam ski area and reopen a hotel.
My
But
goodness
his plan
gracious.
to make the ski runs longer requires skiers to get closer to the tops of the mountains where the wind farm has turbines.
Yep.
Currently, there is a 1,300-foot buffer.
That's a long buffer.
Won't get hit if the turbine blades throw chunks of ice.
Right.
The idea is to reduce that buffer to something like 500 feet.
Yeah.
Now, Pachos, he's the boss man there, he's the guy from the state. He said Otten contacted Brookfield, who owns the resort, about the change. The company said it wanted to study whether there would be an impact on safety, and Otten would have to fund it. Well, Otten's not going to pay for it. That's not his characteristic.
Well, if he wants to expand that, he's going to have to do something. But
Coas County originally recommended a 1,300-foot buffer zone. That might be arbitrary, it might not, but I'm sure they by now know, just from looking at Searsburg,
Well,
how far those turbines
yeah.
throw the ice.
my bet is that it's not actually 1,300 feet. My bet is it's 1,320 feet. No, 1,370 feet.
Why would
Whatever
you
it
say
is.
that?
My bet is that it's a quarter of, they just specified a quarter of a mile.
Oh, okay.
I have read about ice being shed from those blades, and 1,300 feet does strike me as being excessive. But, you
I
know,
think it's arbitrary. I think
Yeah.
when they did it, nobody knew.
yeah,
And I think the answer is find out what the real distance is,
Mm-hmm.
and conservatively create a new buffer zone.
right,
And
Right.
It's sort of a natural. I know Berkshire East has a wind turbine.
Yeah.
Only one. They also have a solar farm.
Well, if you think about it, would a wind turbine in Kansas collect ice?
I would imagine if the weather is cold
Right.
enough in Kansas.
And that turbine at that hospital is only a few feet from the hospital,
That's an interesting point.
and they have 3 turbines at the Best Western, and they have 2 turbines at the John Deere dealership, and they have 3 turbines at the Arts Center. There are a lot of turbines, and they're all just in the town. Now they aren't as big as those turbines, but they're big enough. That one at the hospital's 10 stories tall. So, and I don't know how big that means, but
I don't either.
it's not.
I don't want to even. Otten's going over at Mount Snow, and I don't even want to comment on what he did there. But he wasn't able to keep the mountain. He wound up having to sell it.
Yeah.
So he made some administrative blunders, I think.
Well, we've all made blunders.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be able to pass muster when he gets to the pearly
Well, I'd
gates.
like to see the idea that he's got. I think is a good one.
Yeah.
And it looks like a nice ski area.
Yeah.
All narrow trails, big wide. It's it looks like it's rather challenging.
It looks too challenging for me.
Here's another picture that I think is good.
Okay.
I'll try to pull this guy up. This is the Solar Impulse.
Oh yes, of course.
Solar Impulse 2. It's a solar airplane.
Yes.
It wants to circle the world on wind power alone.
Yeah.
I think that this is...
It crossed. This is not the same
Impulse
one.
2.
Yeah, this is not the same one that crossed the United States, but it's the same group.
It's got the grand goal of circumnavigating the world using solar energy harnessed from the sun alone and nothing else.
And, by the way, they plan on flying this plane around the world, only landing it where they need to change pilots.
Correct. It says that here.
Yeah.
The 236-foot wingspan, which is wider than a 747, will be covered with 17,000 solar cells. There's the cockpit, and if you look at the back of it, it's built like a kite.
Yeah.
It's built to be ultra-light.
Yeah. You can see the frame, and the frame is just covered with cloth. I'm sure that's the only reason it's there is for aerodynamic reasons.
Cockpit has enough space for just one pilot at any one time. The whole thing's made of carbon fiber and tips the scales at a mere 5,000 pounds. It's big.
It's big and it's light. Yeah.
The engines themselves are 90% more efficient compared to the turbofans that power commercial jets.
Efficiency? I'm sorry, 90% more efficient than a jet?
I think that's hard to do.
No, it's not hard to do, but it's also, whenever you compare efficiencies, you're likely to be comparing apples and turnips. You know, they're very different things.
They expect it to cruise at an altitude of 28,000 feet to maximize its solar ray intake. At night, it will drop down to 16,000 feet with a top speed of 40 miles an hour.
Don't you love it? This is called slow flying.
To the cramped space for hours or maybe days at a stretch.
Yeah.
Without air conditioning or heating. Sometime between April and July.
Without air conditioning or heating, and they're at what altitude?
28,000. They're not going to need air conditioning.
Whew, 28,000 feet.
Suits.
They'd have to have thermal
Heat
suits. Yeah, they would have to have that.
Well, it's an interesting concept. I mean, it's, you know, it's a...
I should think that would be a... What happens if you get a cold and you got your ears plugged up? You'd have problems. I think they'd have to hire people who live high up in the Andes or in the Himalayas or something to pilot that thing.
Here's another picture of a brownfield turned into solar.
Yeah, this is a story that I really like.
This is a good one. Let me find. Yeah, let me get this guy up. That's real. That's not an artist's rendition. That's a real picture. Of a former Riley Tar and Chemical Plant. Boy, I bet that polluted a lot.
You can bet your bottom dollar it did that.
Indianapolis has been transformed into a $30 million energy-producing operation.
So this is a brownfield which had been a
the manufacturing.
It was a Superfund site.
I'm sure it was. Yeah,
it was.
They were making tar there.
Yeah, it was a Superfund site.
Poured it into the ground. I'm sure, you know.
So you've got a place that was a complete wreck from an environmental point of view. It needed to be cleaned up badly enough that it became a Superfund site, which meant automatically that it cost millions of dollars just to clean that mess up. And now that property, which was a brownfield, which means that you really can't use it for very much, is being used for generating electricity. And I don't know how much area we've got in brownfields in the United States, but
there's a lot.
There's a lot. And I don't know if a former landfill is considered brownfield or not.
If it's not, it's awful close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. There may be a technical difference, but it may be that it actually is brownfield. And one way or the other, what we're seeing is a lot of land that we cannot use being used for purposes that are very beneficial. And so I was delighted to see that article.
I showed a picture last week, I think, about Atlanta, right outside of Atlanta, where they've capped over a landfill.
Right.
And they got a huge solar farm on.
Well, they're going to do it in Brattleboro.
They're going to do it in Brattleboro. It's an idea whose time has come.
And that's a useful piece of legislation.
Through all my pictures here. Through them all. So, what are we going to talk about now that I'm out of pictures?
You're out of pictures. Well, we've gone to. I don't think we're going to talk for another 20 minutes.
We don't have to.
We don't have to. We can just ask the folks at BCTV to package this in a short program, or not do it at all. You know, just stick it onto the web the way that they usually do. So I think
their option.
Their option. I think what we're going to do is say good day to everyone. And
I can find out which camera is looking at me. I'm supposed to know that. There it is. Hi there, guy.
Okay. I know which one looks at me because it's the one that always looks at me. But I don't know that that's the one that's on. Look, that's the one that's on, the one in the middle up there.
Yep.
All right, so see you all and have a really good week. And we will be back here next Thursday morning recording the show for you, so it'll be on Friday. And I'm still working on that website that has the old shows on it. It's got all of the information, the individual items that we have.
Okay.
But it doesn't have the shows up yet.
Okay.
And
you got a table of contents, you mean?
Yeah, there's a table of contents, and you can see the individual items. And I'm kind of thinking about putting together the money that it would take, because it'll take a little bit of money to make it so that it actually has the show on the screen instead of just a link to the show. We can do that.
Embedded.
Yeah, have it embedded.
Yeah.
So that you can click on whichever you want and watch the show and see the links and go to it. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. And, you know, it's fun. It means this program means that my granddaughter and my grandson who live in Arizona can watch me on television.
Watch it, huh?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, because it's on the internet.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
And my other granddaughter who lives in Wisconsin, who is the one I mentioned, who's half Vietnamese, is too young. She just learned her alphabet about a year ago, and she's now learning what it actually is. She's very musical, so she sings all the time.
Cool.
But she doesn't know what the words mean, or at least I don't think she knows what the words mean. But she was looking at symbols on a television and singing along to what those symbols meant, the alphabet song that went with them, when she was 1.5 years old.
Wow.
But she wouldn't hold a normal conversation. She would just sing. And then at the age that you would expect a child to start talking, she actually started talking.
How about that?
Isn't that funny? Kids are so funny the way they develop. They really are.
So before we go, what's going on next week?
Next week is going to be James Perkins, and I don't know if he's bringing, I've forgotten the name of the fellow who is with him. Chris? Was it Chris?
I can't
Remember. But they're going to be coming and talking about microhydro again.
Yeah.
And they have looked around, kind of poked around, and they have some ideas that there might be sites in Brattleboro that could be developed for microhydro.
Well, microhydro doesn't take much. You don't need
No,
a dam.
it doesn't take much. You don't need a dam. You do need a big drop for what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do it with a weir, and in fact, the site at the Brattleboro Co-op, where there's a dam there, that dam could be used for that kind of the Archimedes screw turbine. Mm-hmm. We could do that. But there are some places in Brattleboro and around where it may be possible to have, not big, these are not, you know, 0.5 megawatt type of things. They're more like, we're talking about kilowatts here. But we could have power generation that could be beneficial to the people who own the land. And so he's going to be talking about that as a possibility.
It'll be a very interesting presentation.
Yeah, it could be. And I want to get a number of other people into the show. I've talked to Peter Thorell at Sovereign Solar. And the fact of the matter is we could have Tad Montgomery or somebody like that down, because he's involved with the solarized. Are you familiar with the solarized?
I'm not really.
Well, there's solarized Putney is going on right now, and there really should be a solarized Brattleboro. But there's solarized Putney, and there's solarized Norwich, and there's solarized Upper Valley, and there's solarized a bunch of these places. And the idea is the solarized movement, which is not as far as I can tell, it's not an incorporated thing. It's just a thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. But the solarized movement will find a couple of sources. The solarized Putney source movement uses Sovereign Solar as one, and then there's another one which does solar thermal water systems, mm-hmm. and then they also use Real Goods Solar, and basically what they're doing is, if you want to put solar on your house, you can sign in, you subscribe for a certain amount of money, and Real Goods will come in and they'll put up that system. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a good site, you can still get benefits of the net metering and so forth by using an off-site system, and you join into a co-op. I don't know what the actual formation of the thing is legally, but it's essentially a co-op.
It's some sort of entity.
Right, which is put together by Sovereign Solar, and then if you want to have solar hot water, you can get that from the other organization, and for the life of me I can't remember the name of the organization. But nevertheless, if you can get 100 people to sign into these things, it all of a sudden makes the entire operation much more efficient. So your price goes down. You see? And so Solarized Norwich is in its third iteration of Solarized Norwich. Mm-hmm. They've just been doing this every year. And Norwich is not a huge community, but they've got every reason to believe that they're going to be capable of producing the bulk of their own power very soon, and the town can be involved.
They got a college there too.
They have a lot up there. It's amazing to me. They have 2 solar companies that are both very innovative in Norwich. But there's a lot going on there. So I want to get somebody in who can talk about these community solar projects. I believe that Peter Thorell said that Sovereign Solar had 6 of them that were currently going on. And I asked him, what do I do as a Brattleboro resident to try to get something like this in Brattleboro? Well, he gave me an answer, which was talk to Tad Montgomery. But Tad might not want to come on because he I don't know, maybe he's camera shy. I don't know. I think he would be good, but a lot of people don't want to come on, so I can't hold that against anybody who's
maybe
in that.
Wanted for something.
I doubt it.
Sorry, kid.
But nevertheless, what Peter told me was, I can't get into solarized Putney because I'm not in Putney. But I can get into community solar anywhere in Vermont that a community solar thing is going up. If I can get in, without, like solarized Putney is for people who live in Putney. But if it's not part of the solarized movement, it's probably open to me if it is in Green Mountain Power territory.
Green Mountain Power, yeah.
It has to be the same utility that I'm getting my power from. But the cost of getting into this, I could finance my entry into it 100%, no money down, and actually have my utility bills go down immediately. And then after 70,
sounds like a winner.
yeah, it does. And then after a certain number of years, when the system is paid off, it varies, depending on the system. It might be 10 years. My utility bills could go to 0.
I like that idea.
You see, so this is something that I'm actually considering for the summer. And we'll see how it goes. But I think that everybody should be thinking about this. And it's not just solar. Theoretically, you could do that with wind. You'd have to have a wind farm that was running as a co-op, but you could do it that way. Theoretically, you could do it with biomass. And the biomass plant, if it's a type of thing that we were talking about, which is a wood-based biomass plant where the gases are really scrubbed carefully before they go into a machine like the Jenbacher engine, is clean. Other biomass can be clean too. Biomass from a farm where they're doing digesting in a biodigester doesn't have any of those emission problems that people normally associate with biomass, because the way biomass got a bad name was people burning wood in their wood stoves.
Well, yeah.
Because that can be pretty polluting.
There are some towns in Vermont, you go through them at night and you're coughing.
Yeah, and that's not necessary. It really isn't necessary. And again, we're back to this efficiency thing where people in North Springfield were saying, we killed the biomass plant, which is operating and my wood stove is operating at 80% efficiency, but that biomass plant was only going to be 23%. And they don't realize that when you're talking about efficiency, you can't compare it unless you know specifically what you're comparing. Because the wood stove, the efficiency is the efficiency of the burn. And the plant, it's the efficiency of delivering power. And the other thing, of course, is the plant. In that plant, the smoke was going to be scrubbed and really, really clean coming out.
I think that people just didn't believe it.
They didn't believe it. Some of them didn't pay attention. There were organizations that went in. Some of them were organizations I would have expected people to know better. That in those organizations than just to say biomass is bad. But they had people in North Springfield holding up a sign and sitting in front of it and smiling and so forth. And the sign said biomass in Vermont, ? Or no, it was biomass not in Vermont. That's what it was. And I was thinking, I wonder how many of those people burn wood in their wood stoves. And it just bothers me. We've got to be more thoughtful and less pig-headed. Maybe I shouldn't say that word because I don't want to accuse people of being pig-headed. But we have to be more thoughtful and less careless.
It's a matter of presentation. The idea that it's clean has to come out right up front. This is cleaner than anything else, or cleaner than da-da-da-da-da-da.
That's right.
And stop obstructing things by saying it's
well,
biomass.
you know that thing that we had in North. I'm sorry. Where did we go in the north?
St. Johnsbury.
St. Johnsbury. That was a thing in which there were people who were obstructing wind. Mm-hmm. And their reasons for obstructing wind, you can go down the list and say, well, this reason they're giving is wrong, and mm-hmm. this reason they're giving is wrong, and this mm-hmm. reason they're giving is wrong. But they've got the ear of people who are living in fear.
Mm-hmm. And fear is the word.
Yeah.
Fear is the word.
And
fear is a great motivator.
Fear is a great motivator. That's absolutely correct. And whether it's being used on the global level to make people in countries afraid of some other racial group or some other religion or whatever it is, or being used on a local level to make people afraid of wind farms. And the fact of the matter is not all wind farms should be sited where they are.
I agree with that too.
But let's base these things on reality.
On reality, on facts.
On facts. And when I said, just for the people who are watching who may not know this, I was giving a presentation in a panel that was addressing the future of energy in Vermont. And the person next to me had an agenda which was clearly, number one thing, anti-wind. The person next to her had an agenda which was, I don't know that global warming is even happening, and I want fracking to be done because I need natural gas for my business. Yeah, and the person next to him had an agenda which was anti-wind. So we had 4 people on there, and the closest anybody got to being mainstream environmentalist was me. Well, I'm not mainstream anything. I'm the guy who somebody said, if you do this, it'll help you think outside the box. I can't even find the box. But the point is, these people were afraid that their health was in danger. Mm-hmm. And they were so much afraid that their health was in danger that they were not willing to listen to evidence that it wasn't. They were so afraid of
That's a good way to describe it. Really.
Yeah. They were so afraid that their property values were going to go down if there was a wind farm that they were unwilling to listen. And when somebody said something about wind and somebody else said something about wind, I said, I think for those people who are paying it, listening, not all environmentalists are anti-wind. And for example, the Cape Wind project in Massachusetts recently won a court victory, and one of the organizations that was behind Cape Wind, that was supporting Cape Wind in the construction of the Cape Wind project, was the Massachusetts Audubon Society. Mm-hmm. Now, when I said that, I saw a bunch of people sitting together go, oh, like this. And you could hear the groan, and you could see the arms go up.
They have the turncoats. How could they do that to us?
Yeah, right. And they didn't want to hear that the Audubon Society Massachusetts Audubon Society was supporting Cape Wind. Well, the Maine Audubon Society was also supporting Cape Wind. Mm-hmm. Why would they do that? When you look at the science, what you see is, Benjamin Sovacool, good example. His numbers may not be perfect, but this is a good example of the kinds of numbers that are coming up. A gigawatt hour of electricity from wind, he's estimating 0.27 bird deaths. A gigawatt hour of power from nuclear, he's estimating 0.6 bird deaths, almost twice or more than twice as many. A gigawatt hour from fossil fuels, he's estimating 9 point something, I don't remember, 9.42 or something, bird deaths. So the number he's
by cats.
Oh, forget that. I mean, but in terms of,
they're only little birds.
Yeah, right. In terms of the numbers of birds dying, the numbers of birds being killed by fossil fuels is 35 times as many as you get out of. So the Audubon Society is sitting there saying, okay, if we were to shut down 100% of our fossil fuel plants and and replace it with just wind power. And we've got enough wind power in this country to do that if we want. What would that do to the bird population? Well, it would save the lives of millions and millions of birds.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, first of all, I don't think that is a good move, because we have to have a more diverse portfolio than just wind.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything should be in the mix to some
Right,
degree.
absolutely, except for two things, fossil fuels and nuclear. But in terms of renewable power, there may be power sources we haven't even thought of. You know,
Oh, yeah.
we just don't know. But the other thing is the birds that are killed by wind power are going to be specific species. I doubt very much that large wind farms are going to kill any sparrows. Okay, they will kill eagles and hawks. So we might find an imbalance develop if we depend too heavily on wind. But what we're doing now with fossil fuels, we're just killing everybody. You know, including each other.
Yeah.
Us. And you know, the UN revised its estimates of the number of people killed by air pollution. 7 million people a year worldwide. All right.
Okay.
7 million people a year. Okay, if 7 million people a year, what's the cost to the economy of 7 million people dying prematurely? What is the cost to the economy of not just the loss of those people, but the medical attention that had to go into them before they died? What is the cost to the economy of the millions of people, which is going to be a multiple of 7 million, who get sick in one way or another, asthma, and they don't die, they just kind of hang on. And what we're talking about is an amount of money that we really don't know, but the estimates that they have are somewhere between 600 and 1 billion and 1.9 trillion dollars a year. And if we could stop fossil fuels now and collect that money and use it to put in the renewables, we'd be able to stop global warming dead in its tracks.
It would stop immediately if we could get that money funneled into the pockets of the elite right away.
Well, yes, I suppose, and there are some elite who are probably already getting it. You know that.
I'm sure they are.
You know.
I'm sure they are.
But
Well, I remember the J joke about Yenbacher,
oh, okay,
and it had to do with a guy who couldn't pronounce the letter J as we do it.
okay.
And he said, I don't know what's going on with you guys. As soon as I learn how to pronounce yelly, or as soon as I learn how to pronounce yam, you turn around and tell me it's yelly.
Yam.
Well, that's enough, huh?
Okay.
Goodbye, people.
Goodbye, people. We're at the end of our 2 hours, and I'm glad that you were willing to put up with us for all this long.